you for joining us for this episode of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World. Professors Guernsey and Haymond here. We're going to talk about profit today. Economic profit is not the same thing as accounting profit. Distinguish those for us.
Sure. So an accounting profit, I mean, you're all, even if you're not an economist or accountant, you probably have this idea, hey, if I were to go out and make a lemonade stand and I'm going to have to spend $50 in supplies and I get sales for $100, I made $50. We would think of that as accounting profit. That's kind of our what we're going to have to pay taxes on. And so that's, as you might say, that would be an explicit cost, and we would have that. But there's something we're missing. What are we missing?
You're missing the opportunity cost or the implicit cost of your time.
Your time. So if you're out there all day working your lemonade stand, you could have been doing something else with that time. And that opportunity cost has a price, has a value associated with it. And so typically economists are going to capture all of those opportunity costs. And it's not just the entrepreneur's time. Also, it may be some of the resources that they use, their own capital that they bring that they may not price into the equation. They don't have to pay taxes on it, on that economic profit per se. The way they would with accounting, because it's a little bit different. It tends to be actually less than the accounting profit. So we have this situation where economic profit is going to capture all aspects of the costs and all aspects of the benefits, whereas accounting will be something less. Accounting is more formal in the sense that's what you have to pay Uncle Sam if you're a United States citizen. So that's one way to start.
Okay, so that's helpful. Now, short run versus long run, because markets move, there might be an economic profit, but that's a signal to other producers.
Yeah, and so this is coming in our chapter where we have on market structure. And one of the things we found out about a competitive market structure is that the economic profit is going to be zero in the long run. And we say, well, how does that work? Firms are not going to make any money. And this is where that distinction between economic profit and accounting profit comes in. So from an economic viewpoint, economic profit happens not when there's what we call zero profit. This is where we really confuse. Economists are really kind of strange people. Zero profit for economics is not actually a profit of $0. So that may be tricky. But here's what economists think about when they say zero economic profit. What they mean by that is that when there is zero economic profit, there is no incentive for you to change your behavior, whatever you're doing. So let's say that on average, that all industries across the world make a 5% profit on average. Risk adjusted, that you make 5%. So if you're making 5% return, then you would have zero economic profit because you're making what everybody else does and you have no incentive to move or change your behavior. If, however, you're making 10% profit, what's going to happen if you're making 10% and everybody else is making 5%? What do you think is going to happen, Professor Guernsey?
If there's good information flow, other people are going to be attracted to that market that has a higher profit.
And firms are going to come in, or even if the same firms will expand their production. And so you're going to change, and that's going to keep, that expansion is going to drive that profit down as the additional supplies come on until you earn that normal economic rate of return. And likewise, if you're making 2%, and the average is 5%, what are you going to do?
You're going to leave.
You're going to leave eventually. And it's probably useful to show a chart up here to talk about it. And we have to think about this in long run terms because we've made that distinction before. In the short run, you've got at least one of your productive inputs is fixed and at least one is variable. But we said in the long run, everything's variable. And when you're talking about entering the market and exiting the market, you can't necessarily do that in the short run, but you can in the long run, and that's what's going to happen. So what you were describing, we can see pictorially on this graph. And so let's imagine that there's some sort of equilibrium price and quantity associated with a supply curve that's an equilibrium supply curve. And so let's assume for a moment that there's actually an economic profit. And you're actually seeing that because the price of the output is leading that profit. and we're at, say S1 supply curve. In that particular condition, as you said, Dr. Currency, when other people see you making 10% when the rate of return is 5% for everybody else, they're going to enter the market. You're going to have this tendency for the supply to increase until we get to that normal rate of return. Likewise, if we have a price that is below the ability to earn that average industry rate of return, then you're going to see people in the long run exit this industry and go to others, such that the supply curve is going to shift back. The long run position, we're going to be left with a situation where we're going to make an average rate of return. We call that zero economic profit. And zero economic profit does not mean zero. It means you have no incentive to change your behavior. You're content where you are, and you're going to be making what everybody else is making.
So zero economic profit, let me see if I can state it another way. You can't do any better somewhere else with those resources.
Yeah. So zero economic profit, we would have an accounting profit, let's say in my example of 5%, which risk adjusted, but it would be zero because you're not going to do anything different.
Right. Yeah, very good. Okay, well, thank you for joining us on this episode of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World, as we've considered economic profit as well as accounting profit.